Dushani is a qualitative researcher focusing on the intersection of human-computer interaction, computer-supported cooperative work, and social sciences, with a particular interest in sustainability, information visualization, and data visualization domains. Before her PhD, Dushani worked as an assistant lecturer at the University of Colombo School of Computing in Sri Lanka, where she studied her degree in Bachelor's Honours in Software. Dushani then carried out her PhD in human-computer interaction at Cardiff University in the United Kingdom, where she focused on exploring the design of data visualizations to visualize household consumption data to encourage sustainable practices at home. She currently now works as a research associate in the Glasgow Data Project, which is where I'm going to show, exploring ways to visualize children's personal data. But today, she's going to draw upon her PhD work to talk about use of data sculpture to encourage sustainable practices at home. I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to hand over to Dushani.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Can you hear me okay? I hope my sound is coming through. All right, so I am going to share my screen so that I can share the slides. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming for the talk today. I'm really excited for discussing how we can make sense of data in different ways. So the title of my talk today is basically about the use of data sculptures to visualize household consumption data in different ways. This is about my PhD work that I did at Cardiff University, as Andrew mentioned before. So before I dive into that work, I thought I could just take a few minutes to talk about information visualization in general, and look at different ways of visualizing information, why we need that, why do we need to visualize in the first place, and then diving into my PhD research to talk about how it can be applied practically. So as to give it a start, I thought of talking about why data actually matters. So on a daily basis, we come across data in our everyday lives. It could be through an energy bill or through our mobile phones, our laptops. It could be any device where we come across data in terms of text or numbers or figures. And sometimes raw numbers are quite difficult to make sense of, or raw text data is quite difficult to make sense of. Therefore, we can use a simple way to look at this data in a way we can make sense of it quite quickly and easily. And for that, we use data visualization. So for example, if it was an energy bill, rather than seeing the numbers in text and rather than seeing the consumption in text and numbers, if it was given as a chart to show this is how much the kettle consumed, this is how much the TV consumed, it's quite easy to do a comparison visually and understand which device is using more and which device is using less. So turning raw data, which can be complex, into a simple format that we can easily understand and make sense of and interpret is called data visualization. So like I mentioned, it can help us to easily spot patterns, trends in our data, and also it can help us make decisions for the future as well, since we can quickly grasp what the data is actually telling us. I thought of picking up a few examples from this website. Information is Beautiful. This is a well-known website. You might have come across this as well, where they show different examples of visualizing data in different ways. I picked 3 examples just to go through. This one is about food waste. They are visualizing food waste by food type and by source. So they say cereals and grains was the food type which was wasted the most in this particular year. And households are accountable for 66% of food waste. And they also nicely show if food waste was a country, it would be the 4th biggest emitter of carbon emission. So this can give us a really nice understanding of food waste rather than just seeing numbers. Another example was this, where they use the world map and visualize which country is popular for what. So, for example, Iceland is the safest country, Australia has most natural parks, Peru has the most culinary diversity. So, in one screen, we can see what each country is familiar for, rather than seeing it in a table or in some other format. The other example I chose was hangover cures. It's quite a nice visualization. So there's a traditional cure to the American cure, then Dutch use beer, and then there's an Italian cure. Again, rather than just using text to just say things to people, you use diverse visualizations to communicate the idea you want to communicate. Now, most of the visualizations that we come across on a daily basis could be on a screen or it could be 2D, but it doesn't have to be. We can move to the physical space when we want to visualize data. So it can be a physical object that actually shows us some data. When a physical object shows data through its geometry or material qualities, we call that data physicalization. Now, this can be done in several ways. So it could be either a manually reconfigurable physicalization. So basically, as simple as you lay some tokens on a table and you pick different color tokens to say how people travel to work, for example. Do people take the train? How many people take the bus? How many people walk? So likewise, you make a bar chart on a table and you can manually reconfigure these tokens as well. Another way is to use data sculptures. So data sculptures is a more artistic way of using physical objects to show some data. Now, these can be used mostly for household environments, office spaces, libraries, where the aesthetic quality of the object actually matters. Now, this particular example I chose was from a conference in 2017 where they are physicalizing physical activity data. So each of the loops, each of the rings in this object shows how many steps you have walked given on a given day. And the top loop over here is showing your goal. So you say, I'm going to walk 15,000 steps this week. That's the goal ring. And then the rest of the rings, which are for each day, will rotate upwards to show how much you have walked. And you can compare your steps on Monday, for example, with the goal ring. And that angle of comparison actually says whether you have done well or whether you can improve. The other type is using shape-changing interfaces. So it could be any sort of object which can bend maybe. So for example, something like this, which can bend or stretch or collapse to show certain data. These types of objects or interfaces that change its shape to show data, we call them shape-changing interfaces. So these are some of the ways we can use data physicalization to actually encode some data. I selected two examples from this website called Data Physicalization. So if I quickly go to that website, it's a whole list of physicalizations that have been done from like 5,500 BC. So how people have used physical objects to encode data very early on. So this example that I chose is about the Yakama tribe, which was an American tribe. They apparently used these threads and then put knots in different places of the thread to encode some data. So apparently there were some women who kept knots to show when they got married, when they had the first child, when somebody passed away. And these threads were apparently very personalized, that each woman could at any given point decode this thread and say, oh, this knot was for this period when I had my child. So they could interpret what they did with the knots. The other example I took down was this pop-up and movable books, which were apparently mostly used for astrology way back then. I think these are quite common now as well for children and all, but they had the chart of the planets to show how the planets were actually moving, and they used it for astrology back then. On the book itself, you had these moving pieces that you could move and find the actual angles of for the planetary movements. Okay, I'll go back to the slides. Yeah. Okay, so now why do we need physicalization? So we have data visualization, which usually happens on a screen or on a 2D space. And then why do we need physical objects? Well, when we show data through a physical object, it provides different affordances. It can give you different perceptions, like the angle you look at the object could give you a different interpretation of your data. You can touch and feel this as well. You can modify it using your senses. You can connect to it, not just visually, but also could be touch, could be smell, could be taste. And also, since it's a physical object that is sitting in the room with you, it can encourage interaction. You can go there. When you walk past it, you see the object and you see it is maybe different to how it was 5 minutes ago. So it can help you reflect. And the other thing is, these physical objects can be designed in a way to actually blend in to the environment that you live in. So for example, if the house is has wooden furniture, white walls, maybe you can design an object to show data using a wooden object. So it nicely blends in, doesn't stand out. If it was a screen, it might stand out and it might distract you from your daily activities. But it could just blend in and it could be in the background without actually coming into the main focus. So with that, I will now move on to talking about my PhD research, where I used the concepts of a data sculpture, which we just looked at a few minutes ago, to visualize household consumption data with the aim of encouraging people to be more sustainable at homes. So it could be a family household, it could be a partner household, it could be a single occupant household. How can we make them collaboratively be more sustainable while also including children in the conversation? So first, I'll give some background into what this research was about and why do we need to look at this. So on a daily basis, we all engage in activities at our houses that consume resources such as electricity, water, gas, could be travel, could even be like recycling, reusing practices. Now, we do all of these things like watching TV, using the computer, washing dishes, clothes, etc. But we don't really know how much of the practices that we do at home can contribute to carbon emission that eventually contributes to climate change. In general, most people don't have an idea how much they can contribute through their actions. Now, there have been many interventions done in the past to communicate to the general public, look, you are using this much energy. Maybe you can be a bit mindful in terms of how much you use. So all of these examples, for example, the one over here, the kettle, this wire lights up in different colors to show whether you're using the kettle too much or whether it's draining a lot of power. This flower lamp over here, it's a lamp that kind of the flower opens and closes to mimic an actual flower. If it opens, that means you are in a very eco-friendly usage pattern. So there have been different things done, but still there's a gap in how much people actually are aware and how much can they interpret their consumption, which gives them the agency to actually do something about it at home. Now, that was the aim. So what I tried to look at in my research was, okay, there's all of these visualizations done on a 2D screen, on mobile apps, on web apps, but still households contribute to a major part of carbon emission. It's actually 72% when you make it through carbon-based accounting, according to the UN report in 2024. So how can we leverage the strategies of data physicalization or data sculptures in this particular case to communicate this idea of consumption to people in a better way, so they understand it better and they also can do something to reduce their consumption at home. So I used a practice-based approach in my research. Most of the research in this area was done on behavior change, but recently, the researchers have moved away from behavior change to this practice theory-based approach, which is the wheel in the middle over here. The reference is down there if you wanted to take a look at it. So what the recent researchers have been saying is, if you want someone to change their behavior, that might not last for a longer period of time because of the environment they live in. There might be external factors, internal factors that affect that behavior. Therefore, we need to go a bit beyond behaviors. We have to go one level above and look at it in a more high level way through something called practices. So I'll give you a simple example. If my normal behavior or action is to go home and do my laundry at 7 o'clock in the night, and then say I am living in a student accommodation, and after 6 o'clock, nobody's allowed to put on their washing machines because of the vibrations and all the noise and all of that. So now I have to change my action. I have to change my normal behavior because of the environment I live in, the infrastructure I live in. So if there was an intervention that was targeting my behavior, it wouldn't be useful to me anymore because there's an external factor that's out of my control. Now, what practices do is they look at it in a more bird's eye view and look at the infrastructure, the material availability, the individual's capabilities, and also the society. So you look at all of this, you keep all of this in mind when you actually develop the interventions. Yeah, and then I went through a human-centered design approach. For 4 years, I was working with households, families, and single occupants, and also partner households to iteratively come up with a design solution that could help them understand their data better. So in summary, this is what I did throughout 4 years. So I'll go through each phase in a bit more detail in the next few slides, but just to summarize in one slide how the entire design process was. In phase 1, what I initially wanted to do was to understand what are the normal practices people do at homes. How do they even use energy, and for what do they use it? And also, do people want to visualize data in the first place at home? If so, how would they like to do it? So to understand all of this, this was the exploratory phase. So to understand all of this, I went to I first did a survey, and then I went to households, and I did 13 semi-structured interviews to kind of gather all of these nuances to empathize with the user, to understand what their challenges are, what their pain points are, and what actually they need. In this phase, I created 4 low fidelity paper prototypes to take with me to the households to show them different ways of visualizing data. And then with the findings there, I then go to phase 2, where now I have some understanding coming from the participants. So I designed 4 different, again, low fidelity prototypes to communicate the ideas that they gave me in phase 1, and also to show how different data could be visualized. So this was done in household design workshops with 15 homes. Then with that, I go to phase 3, where I designed the first version of the data sculpture. And I did 14 user feedback workshops to get their feedback on it. And then finally, I had the final sculpture, and I did a field study with 15 households, where each house used the system for 3 weeks. I'll briefly go through each phase just to show what I did. So in phase 1, these are the 4 low fidelity prototypes I had. So the first 2, the top 2 were paper prototypes. The bottom 2 was just images. Now, these were chosen by the understanding I got from the literature in terms of data visualization, certain strategies people like, such as gamification, different lighting, mimicking the nature, etc. So when I did the study, I found certain challenges, considerations. So for example, how people already try to reduce their consumption at home. What are the concerns and challenges they have in moving towards sustainable consumption? And how do they like physicality, and how well does it help them interpret data? And also, when it comes to children in households, how can we involve children in the conversation of reducing consumption and being more sustainable? So these findings gave me some of the lessons that I'm taking forward, which are, when I design something for a household context, which includes adults and children in some cases, it has to be interpretable to both adults and children. And they appreciated the physicality. It's a household context, so they liked having something physical, but also aesthetically pleasing, because it is a house. And also people, family households wanted to involve children as well in this conversation. Being a nature-based visual would help as well. Again, we are designing for the household context. And also some other things, such as positively reinforcing people, giving actionable suggestions, including strategies such as goal setting. And also some people brought up that it might be useful to have a separate mobile app that is more like a companion for a physical object. So they would have the physical object always available at home that they regularly look at. But whenever they want to dig a bit deeper into more data, whenever they want, they can have the access to the mobile app that would give them the data in text and numbers if anybody wanted to understand it a bit better. So with that, then I'm going to phase 2. Now with the findings in phase 1, I created 5 low to medium fidelity prototypes. So the top 3, it was all made with paper and cardboard, but the top 3 were functional. I had a small code written on Arduino to do some small functions for the top 3, and the bottom 2 were paper prototypes completely. Now, these were done to kind of inspire and also generate ideas about how the visualization could look like on a physical artifact. Now, with that, I went back to my participants. This time I had 15 households, 11 family households with children, 2 partner houses, and 2 single occupants. Now, I first gave them a summary of saying, look, you told me a few months ago, these were your challenges, these were your pain points, this is what you need. So from that, these are the design considerations that I have outlined. Now, what do you think? Do you agree? Is there anything else you think that is important? After that discussion, I then requested participants to rank the daily practices they do. So out of different resource uses, electricity, gas, food, etc., can you rank what is the most important one for your house to work on? And then finally, I presented them the 5 prototypes that I have designed using the knowledge from phase 1. And also I provided them different materials like sketching materials and also like paper, cardboard, building materials to take apart what I have made, build what you want, or sketch if you feel more comfortable with sketching. So this was more like an exploratory session. So here I found that when I design something for a household context, the familiarity of the object, the location in the house I designed for, the size, everything matter. If it is the kitchen, is it the living room, is it the bedroom? And also it has to be child friendly. Children have to be able to read it without an adult's support. And also people create an emotional connection to the objects at home. So that also matters when we design for that context. And also it would be good if the object enhances curiosity, if it excites people to look at it, and also if it enhances the intrinsic motivation, so people actually feel that they want to reduce their consumption. It's not more like an extrinsic motivation where you give a reward or a voucher or a rebate for reducing consumption. And also, one of the other important things were they did not want a visitor who's coming to the house to be able to look at the object and say, oh, you've used a lot of electricity. So they wanted privacy with the object. So those were some of the design challenges I had, how to integrate all of that while also preserving the privacy aspect. So finally, now in phase 3, the first version of the sculpture that I came up with was over here. It's up here. So the idea came from the participants in phases 1 and 2. So they want something familiar. They really preferred this one over here, the image D. It's more like a clock interface, so even children are familiar with it. And also they preferred the idea of having bees and flowers, so more nature related. So what I created was 3 discs, each one for electricity, gas, and food waste, because those were the ones that they ranked as the most important ones. Now on each disc, there's a flower sitting on it, and on one petal of the flower, there's a bee. Around each disc, there are tiny flowers, which are addressable LEDs. Now, the concept is this bee will start at the 12 o'clock position of the clock, say on a Monday morning. And then throughout the week, as people use electricity or gas or they waste food, the bee will record the data and it will gradually move clockwise to show how much you are using. There's no text, no numbers, because that's what they wanted. It only gives you an abstract idea of how much you're using. Now, we also did a mobile app on which people can set a goal. So they can say, I'm only going to use 5 kilowatt hours of electricity. I'm only going to waste 2 kilograms of food this week. Now that goal or that target will be lit on each disk. So this light that is lit. Now the idea is not to let this bee rotate beyond that target light. So as long as you are within that range, you're okay. So you look at it at a glance, you get the idea, oh, am I going beyond? Oh, okay, I'm doing okay. Now after that, oh yeah, so with the mobile app, I had 4 different visualizations, one for daily consumption, one for each device, and also one chart for weekly consumption, and also one for practice-wise consumption. So for example, all the devices in the kitchen like oven, microwave, fridge, kettle, all of them were clustered as cooking practices. Then you have laundry practices, TV, Xbox, entertainment practices. So people could see which practice are they wasting a lot of, using a lot of resources in. After that, I did the feedback workshops to understand if this actually works. Do people have any modification suggestions, etc. Now with that, what I understood was people really liked the wooden background, it matches households, but they wanted visual clarity. They wanted to enhance the discs against the background of this object. They really appreciated the child friendliness of it. Even a child can understand that the bee rotates. And also they wanted adaptive configurations where they said they wanted to choose which disk shows what consumption, and also set their own target as well. The other one they appreciated was it's not cluttered, so there's no information overload. You look at it, you get an abstract idea, and you can go about your day. But if you want to get to know more information, you can always go to the app and look at the charts to the actual numbers. So with that, I go to the final phase where now I modified the sculpture to match their requests. So the final sculpture I made was a bit smaller than the initial one. It's color coded as well on the sculpture and also on the app. And also the UI of the app, I made a lot of differences so that it's more user friendly and also more pleasing to look at as well. Now, after that, I did a final field study with 15 households where each house used this system for 3 weeks. So I did an initial survey and then an initial household interview, and then 3 weekly interviews during their time of use, and then a final interview at the end of the period, and also a final survey at that point. So some of the findings I got were that people were collaboratively exploring their consumption through the sculpture and also the app, even including children. So sometimes the children would nudge the parents, the bee is moving a lot, so switch off heating. So they would actually do that influence as well. And then parents found it a good opportunity to have the conversations about sustainability with their children as well. And also we saw the temporality of excitement and engagement. So over the 3 weeks, how people were engaging, did it die down at some point, or were they still using it? And also how they understood it. So in week 1, it was quite confusing to people. They didn't understand their consumption yet. But like by week 2 to 2.5, with the rotation of the bees, they were able to reflect on their consumption. So I remember one person did say, I know if I switch on my heating for 3 hours, I know how much the bee is going to rotate. So they were able to reflect their actual use onto the sculpture and get an awareness of how much they're using. The other thing they pointed out was now there's no numbers, no text. So even when a visitor comes, they wouldn't know that this was an energy meter, sort of. They think it's an artistic piece. So it was in one household, it was like a conversation starter. So they had some people over for card games and they asked what was that, and then they had a conversation about, oh, that's an energy meter, that's not something I'm used to. Yeah, and then the final one was self-reflection. It was really nice to see how people were able to reflect on their own practices, identify even like tiny things. I remember one person said they have this practice where they switch on the kettle to make a cup of tea and then they go do something else and they forget they switch it on, come back and they switch it on again to boil it. So even these weird little quirks, they were understanding and trying to reduce things. So it was creating that self-reflection element. So moving forward with this research, I really like to explore this collaborative nature of households to engage in sustainable practices. So moving forward, I would like to explore how to move beyond designing for individuals to designing for a household unit. As a unit, how can we better motivate children and parents or occupants in a shared household to work together to move towards sustainability? And also another avenue I want to explore is how to use participatory data physicalization methods in the home. So this research is mostly about engaging with the user through a human-centered design approach, understanding their challenges and designing for them. But can I have a physicalization at home, which the people at home build themselves and make sense of themselves is another avenue I would like to explore. Yeah, so overall, I just wanted to end with this small quote that I really like. Data doesn't have to be just numbers, it can be a part of our lives. And data visualization, physicalization can help us do that. Thank you very much.